My name is Bruce Kornfeld with StorMagic. Thanks for joining. We're here to talk about an announcement that we made about 2 weeks ago with APC by Schneider Electric, as well as HPE on the server side, about a solution that's perfectly designed for customers looking for solutions at the edge or for a small data center. Very dense, small, zero floor space, as you'll see here in a second, zero floor space even needed, perfect for those remote, small edge environments. And with me today, I've got Ken Baer from APC by Schneider Electric, who's the product manager for their rack product line, their enclosure product line. So Ken will be talking here after I go through the overall solution. So I'll hit the solution, Ken will talk about the APC micro data center, and we'll be happy to answer your questions as well. So without further ado, let's get rolling. So let's talk about edge computing. I assume many of you are on this call because you're either an end user trying to figure out what to do in your edge environment, or potentially you're one of our partners that sell to end users these kind of solutions. And I mean, what's happening here, if you look at the chart that we put in, the market's exploding in terms of solutions, hardware, software, services at the edge. And the reason for that is that data just keeps growing, and need for processing at the edge keeps on going up. And it's all about data's being generated where the customer is. Or in the case of IoT, the Internet of Things, it's where devices are. Devices are at the edge. There's sensors generating all this data that needs to be collected and analyzed. Data centers and cloud are also growing at some similar rate as well. As everyone knows, cloud computing is not going away, but not everything can really be done in the cloud, particularly for these edge environments, is that a lot of environments require on-site servers to run applications because they can't depend on the cloud for everything. Performance is one reason why cloud may not fit for some of these edge environments, is that you can't, in many cases, you can't transact business and have the compute engine be in the cloud. It just takes too long. Customer response times would be poor. Or in the world of IoT, there are just so many devices that you can't, you would flood your connection to the cloud. There are just some use cases, and the use cases keep growing. That's why analysts are projecting that this market just will continue to explode, is that cloud can't do everything, particularly for edge and small data center. And also another reason, that last bullet on the left about costs. I mean, cloud isn't free, right? You have to have an account. You have to pay for compute and storage, but you also have to pay for transfer costs. So if you're sending data from edge to cloud all the time, all day long, in many cases it's cost prohibitive. So it's a long-winded way to say many environments still need on-site kit. They need servers and networking and storage and enclosures in order to solve their compute and storage needs. And Gartner says by 2022, 75% of enterprise-generated data will be created and processed outside the data center or cloud. So this market's exploding, and that's probably why we have so many people on the webinar. So that's why you're here, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So with all this growth, what are the problems that we hear from customers? Okay, we know that they need to build solutions. We know that you need to build solutions for your edge environments and your small data centers outside the cloud, but what are we hearing are the problems? Well, downtime continues to be a problem. Whatever you build needs to be able to be 100% reliable, so you can't have downtime. So the solutions need to be highly available. Costs continue to be a problem. And we have customers that have hundreds, and in some cases, I shouldn't say many, but in some cases, thousands of sites. And every $10,000, $100,000 extra per site adds up very quickly. So it can be expensive to deploy hardware, software, and enclosures at every site. So budgets are a big deal. Cost is always a big deal. Support is always an issue because there are so many small sites out there. You're not going to have IT people there. It needs to be remotely managed. It needs to be able to be installed, maybe not even by an IT person. Ideally, the hardware can be installed by anybody, a maintenance person or the store owner or the store manager, etc. In some cases, you don't even have floor space available. What do you do? Where do you put this stuff? Under a desk? Do you put it behind the retail counter? Do you put it in a closet? So floor space is a premium at these small locations. A lot of environments are dusty or difficult environments to play in. For instance, manufacturing environments or warehouses. They're not the cleanest places in the world. So a lot of times the environment needs to be able to handle, the equipment needs to be able to handle an environment that may not be data center-like, with raised floors and air conditioning and clean air. A lot of these environments are harsher. We actually have some customers that put solutions out in the middle of the ocean, oil rigs, wind turbines, the back of Jeeps for the military. So we've got some really interesting use cases as well. Heavy components can be hard to deal with. These servers in some cases aren't light. They can be pretty heavy. 10, 20 kilos, what is that, 20, 30 pounds ish, right? It can be pretty heavy. How do you deal with all that? And then physical security is always a problem. At these smaller sites, a lot of you are struggling with, okay, what do I do if a server is stolen, if a disk drive is stolen? There's a lot of scrutiny these days on making sure that your information is protected. And of course, the solution we're talking about covers all of these, which we're going to talk about here as we go through the solution. So what is the solution that we announced with APC, Schneider, and HPE? It is a very small, compact enclosure, 6 rack units, 6U, which is only 13 inches wide, and it can have 6 rack units of stuff inside of it, if you will. So the picture you see on the right is showing 2 servers. Those are HPE servers, 2 1U servers, an APC UPS, and then 2 blank plates there. But that could be networking. That could be anything else that you need in that environment. So it's a very dense way to put a lot of gear. So small footprint. One of the best use cases is that APC's designed this to be able to hang it on a wall somewhere. So it really takes up no floor space. So there's secure mounting available to get it up and out of reach. So floor space isn't an issue. It can include all the compute, networking, and storage that you need. Simple to install and manage. It doesn't need a specialized IT person to put the hardware together. And cost-wise, all of this can be bought for less than $10,000 US list price. It's a very attractive price point. So under $10,000 for this full solution should get your attention, whether you're an end user customer or you're a reseller looking to promote this to your customer base. Just a click down on the hardware. So, what we've built here with HPE is the ability to put minimum of two servers, and the reason why we say 2 is for high availability, and I'll talk about that here in a second, but minimum 2 or 3 servers. If you have a use case that required more, like I said, there's six rack units available. So depending on what you have for UPS, maybe your site already has some kind of emergency power set up, so maybe you wouldn't need a UPS in the rack. In that case, you could put 4 or 5 servers in here, or 6, depending on what you want to do. It's totally flexible. But for this example, we're going to talk about 2 servers minimum and 3 is a nice use case as well. The APC rack enclosure has options for power distribution, PDU, as well as UPS. If you want to put your battery backup right inside the rack, that is an option as well. And all of this is built and configured in one 6U rack enclosure. As far as software goes, I'll talk through the software a bit because this is kind of where StorMagic comes in that the software that's running on the servers. First, I'll start at the bottom since it's kind of, the first step is pick a hypervisor. So the hypervisors that are supported are VMware vSphere, Microsoft Hyper-V, or Linux KVM. We're starting to hear a little bit more demand for KVM at these locations because customers are looking for ways to reduce the cost, and that certainly would reduce the cost so that you're not paying for a commercial hypervisor. These open source hypervisors Linux KVM are just as powerful, a lot less cost, and if you're up for it, you can get a free version, but you can buy it through Red Hat and spend a little bit of money on support. But we do support all three of those, and I'll just point out that the way that we support KVM is different than others in the hyper-converged market, in that we support a true open KVM approach. A lot of our competitors in this space use KVM, but they've built their own proprietary user interface and management tools. So you're not able to use open source tools with their KVM. With ours, you can. So a customer can absolutely run their own flavor of KVM, use all of their own tools, and our storage, virtual storage, will work on top of it. StorMagic SVSAN comes in with, we run as a virtual machine. If you look at the picture on the right, SVSAN runs as a virtual machine on top of the hypervisor, and we virtualize the physical storage inside the server. We don't care what the storage is. You decide what makes sense for your environment. It could be all flash, it could be all spinning, it could be a mix of the two. The actual configuration doesn't matter to our software. So you build a configuration you need, we virtualize that disk, and then we're providing the high availability between the two servers using synchronous mirroring. And that's basically the value add that we have here, is we make sure that that environment's up and running 100% of the time. There is an option to do a third node, and I'll just kind of leave it at this. And if anyone wants to ask a question about how we do this, I'll explain it. But we do offer another configuration of a 3-node. The benefit there is that you could take one server offline for maintenance and still have 2 servers running in a highly available cluster. And that is unique in the industry, in that we can do that with only 3 nodes. So in theory, you can lose 2 nodes with a StorMagic cluster, and you can still have applications will automatically keep running on the surviving node. Our competitors in this space would require you to start with 4 or 5 nodes in order to achieve a 2-node failure. One other thing I'm going to mention here, I've got a whole slide on it, which I'm going to show in a second, but the way that we're able to do a 2-node, we're the only ones in the industry that are very happy for you to build a 2-node cluster and do it with confidence. Everyone else will say, either they'll require you to have 3 nodes at the edge, or they'll highly recommend 3 nodes because it makes their architecture a lot easier. For StorMagic, we do 2 nodes all day long. More than 95% of our customers are 2-node deployments at the edge. We have some that have done 3 because they want that extra resiliency, but most of them are just straight up 2 nodes. And the reason and the way that we're able to do that is with this lightweight witness. It is a simple virtual machine that can manage up to 1,000 sites. And I think this is a good time to move to talk about the witness. So what our witness does is it delivers 100% uptime with only 2 servers per site. And the way we do that is it is an out-of-band management approach. So this witness is not in the data path. It's a lightweight virtual machine that you run anywhere. You can run it in a data center and manage as many sites as you have. Each witness VM can manage up to 1,000 clusters. And that's because it's literally just a heartbeat monitor. It's not in the data path. All the other solutions on the market that have remote witnesses, they are in the data path, and they require a pretty heavy-duty virtual machine, and they require lots of networking to be able to operate because of the data being passed around. As you can see from the second bullet, we only require a 9 kilobit per second connection, which is like a 3G cellular network or satellite link, no problem at all. And we can withstand up to a 3,000 millisecond latency, 3 seconds of latency, which is unheard of in this space. So it's designed for this edge environment, and that's what StorMagic is all about, is building solutions that are designed for the edge, keeping them simple, keeping your costs really, really low. And the reason we're able to lower your cost by at least 33% is that we can do at 2 nodes per site what most everyone else requires 3. I won't get into the details here, but if anyone wants to ask about this, there's 2 ways of deploying a witness. You can either build it yourself, which means take a VM, run it anywhere you want, and it can manage up to 1,000 sites. Or we also have a cloud offering called Witness as a Service, so that you can subscribe to this, let us handle your witness for you, and just point it to as many locations as you want. Take a pause for any questions. that you might have. I think there's one that's come in, so give me a second. Okay, so there's a point. I believe this person is an HPE person, so I might have misspoke. So someone's saying that HPE SimpliVity fully supports 2-node clusters with many customers using it. So sorry if I misspoke and didn't mention SimpliVity, but it looks like SimpliVity does have 2-node clusters. I don't know how SimpliVity does it in terms of the remote witness part, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that. Sorry about that, Mr. HPE. All right, there's a question also about cooling that I'm going to let Ken talk about when he gets to talk about the enclosure. Okay, another software component that's part of the solution is encryption. So built into SVSAN is the ability to encrypt data so that as data is being written from a virtual machine, from an application, as it's being written to disk, we can encrypt that data for you. We also make sure that when the data is being mirrored from server to server, that we're sending encrypted data. So it is a great way to ensure security is built into your solution. And what this basically does is it ensures that if there's ever a situation where servers are stolen, data is stolen, disk drives are stolen, you can rest assured that you're not going to have a breach because the data will be encrypted. I heard a customer tell me a story that they literally had a thief back up a fork truck through a warehouse wall, which in many cases they're not super thick. Maybe it was a metal or aluminum or whatever it was. And they just helped themselves to some servers, and they lost data that way. And that's why they're now investigating an encryption solution. So we do support encryption built into the software. Those of you that know the security space and encryption world, you know that when you encrypt data, you also have to have a key manager. We support KMIP, which means you can use any key manager that you want in the industry to manage the keys. But of course, many of you know we also have our own key manager called SVKMS. So of course, we'd love for you to take a look at our own key manager. This is a quick slide on that. So as a separate product, not part of SVSAN, we have our own enterprise key manager that would work for this environment for all of your edge sites. So you can deploy a single key manager to manage all of the keys from your edge sites. But the other benefit here is if you go with SVKMS, you can manage all of the keys in your entire enterprise. So the keys can be from encryption on Oracle databases or any applications running in the data center, Salesforce, cloud applications that you're running on Azure or Google, any key that your environment, that your entire organization is managing for any encryption, our StorMagic SVKMS can manage those keys effectively. And that's a whole nother conversation, but it would be silly for me to not at least make sure everyone knew that we had that product available. Yeah, so I've got a question here about what is the cost of the Witness as a Service feature. I don't have a slide on that. I'm going from memory, but I believe it's approximate. It's less than $1,000. I believe it's $700 per year for up to 1,000 sites. I believe I got that right. And that's all in terms of there's no extra cost for maintenance or transmission costs, et cetera. So for about $700 a year, you can have us provide the Witness for all of your sites up to 1,000. If you had more than 1,000 sites, you would just need to have a second instance. That would be $1,400 a year. And of course, the StorMagic sales team can explain all the details to you because there's other options. There's 3-year and 5-year options, et cetera. But that's the starting price point that I'm remembering from memory here. Okay, I think that's all I've got. So, all right, I don't see any other questions. So, Ken, go for it.
Sure. Thank you, Bruce. So, guys, as Bruce explained, I'm with APC by Schneider Electric. I run our product management team for our rack systems product lines. And I really enjoy getting a chance to talk about edge computing. We are seeing such interesting deployments from our customers and businesses around the world. Edge is enabling all these really unique use cases. When you talk about autonomous cars and smart grid cities, the evolution of 5G. And really, we have our customers pushing the boundaries of feasibility of deploying compute and networking. And when you talk about outdoor conditions and very harsh environments, and it's really forcing us to come up with solutions to help our customers meet those scenarios, which is really exciting for me in product management, but exciting as a whole for the industry. As Bruce mentioned, when we're deploying at the edge, this is really forcing everyone to kind of rethink how they compute and networking, because we're not in a purpose-built white space data center anymore. You can't just bolt a server to the wall or lay it on a desk. I mean, you could, but probably not best practice. So we at APC, along with StorMagic, are helping make that transition very easy for our customers. And when we talk about micro data centers really an all-in-one solution that includes the enclosure and maybe battery backup, power distribution, physical security, remote monitoring, things like that. Basically everything you would see holistically in a centralized data center compacted into this small footprint. So we've really designed our micro data centers around three key pillars or areas. First of those is physical security. So for all those reasons Bruce mentioned earlier, we're no longer in a data center that has armed guards outside and 5 different versions of security to get into the building. And this could be placed right next to customers in a McDonald's, or it could be in a warehouse that is unlocked at night, or wherever it may be. Physical security actually becomes very important now because these are highly distributed sites. They're in public areas potentially, and these are now running critical applications for your business, and they become mission critical. And we can't have them go down because they're running an actual application or use case for the business, but they're also potentially access into your central network. And we've seen cases where people wanting to do harm can get in through an edge site and potentially do harm on a greater scale. So physical security is very important. And that starts with just a physical enclosure, right? Prevent physical access to the equipment. So micro data centers are typically enclosures with panels on all sides and doors, and they're typically locked, right? That's the first step, is kind of just getting everything behind lock and key so that it really prevents 90%, 99% of unauthorized access, whether it be purposeful or accidental. The next step up would be to really make it intelligent in terms of physical security. So now we can talk about access control into the system or the solution itself, whether that be key card or biometric or other types of access. And those things are actually very important when you talk about PCI compliance for retailers with credit card and user data, or HIPAA compliance for healthcare, our Sarbanes-Oxley on the financial side. There's critical data being stored in these systems that need to be kept track of, and an audit trail of people who have access to it. Also, a step above that even would be potentially remote surveillance. So part of our micro data center offering with our NetBots offer, we can have camera surveillance put on the outside or inside of the micro data center that really gives you remote visibility into what's happening there at the site. This could be distributed at 100 different sites, and how great would it be to be sitting at home on your iPhone or your computer and be able to say, okay, site number 50, that's on the other side of the country. I'm just going to pull up the live feed of the camera and see what's going on there because I got an alarm that maybe someone tried to access the enclosure. Rather than try and call somebody or send somebody out there to check it, you just pull it up very quickly on the remote surveillance. So those are very important things, physical security. Also environmental security, or environmental monitoring, I should say. So again, these edge sites are not in perfectly conditioned areas. It could be in an office building or a warehouse where the doors are open. It's hot and humid one day, it's super cold and dry the next day. Maybe the air conditioning doesn't run 24/7, 365 like a normal data center. So keeping track of the temperature and humidity is very important when it comes to IT. A lot of the IT equipment itself has limits on the conditions it can be in terms of temperature and humidity. And it can even have effect on the longevity of the equipment itself. So For instance, UPS batteries have a temperature limit, and if it's under higher temperature above its limit for a period of time, it can start to degrade the life of the battery, which costs money to replace a battery. It costs time and money to truck roll someone out there to replace the battery. These are all things to be taken into consideration. So physical security is very important. The second is simple and easy deployment. Okay, so again, we're talking about hundreds, thousands of sites. We want a very easy way, a repeatable way to enable the solution at all those sites. And there's a few factors there. So not only does the solution need to be the same, but you want to have the confidence as you build the solution that it's all compatible with each other, right? That the UPS has the right voltage for the site it's in, that the PDU has the right plug type to plug into the UPS, or the right plug for the server, or that the server actually fits in the enclosure that you're trying to put it in, right? These are real problems that our customers come to us with. We at APC and working with partners like StorMagic, we have digital tools that ensure all of this compatibility ahead of time, right? You can save the design, but then we take it to the next step. And especially this solution we're talking about today, where it can all be pre-integrated from the factory. That's actually purposely designed to be a little bit more rigid than your average wall-mounted enclosure. It can actually be pre-integrated with up to 250 pounds of equipment. So that means your UPS, your physical security, your servers and networking, all of this can be installed at a time, packaged up in one box and sent to the site. So at these sites, you're not having a full IT staff there at a retail shop or whatever, and they can't move out of your way for hours while you assemble a solution. You just want to be able to take it out of the box, put it up on the wall, turn it on and go. I know it's not that simple, but it gets simpler when it's all pre-integrated. And you want a repeatable solution so you can ensure quality at every single site that you're deploying. So you want the same thing at every single site with the same quality. And then the third is a huge one, which is remote visibility and management. So again, hundreds or thousands of sites. There's not a person there at every single site that you can just call and they have the technical expertise to diagnose or troubleshoot something. So having a software like we do with our EcoStruxure software monitors the infrastructure for you through a single cloud-based pane of glass that you can instantly see the security status, the UPS status, the power status, the environmentals, everything. And you can hopefully mitigate any failures that are going to happen or prevent them, right? So our software uses analytics to look at product data that we have available to us that can say, hey, this UPS on site is potentially going to see a battery failure within the next couple months. You should probably proactively replace that before it potentially becomes an actual issue on site. So these are all really important things when you're talking about deploying edge computing and networking. Okay, so specifically on this solution with StorMagic, we designed this. The enclosure kind of looks a little funny, right? It's not what you would typically see as a wall-mounted solution. With edge computing exploding and data exploding, we're actually needing to deploy now some enterprise-level compute and networking at the edge. And what does that mean? Well, it's bigger, it's heavier, it's more powerful, it's deeper. And when you talk about mounting things on a wall, a server that's 30 inches deep on a wall, you don't want it to stick off the wall 40 inches, right? So we actually had the idea of putting everything up on its side, and that allows you to minimize the footprint off the wall or the protrusion off the wall, and it allows you to mount deeper equipment in there, which enables all of this. So the wall-mounted enclosure is a very important piece. It takes up no floor space, as Bruce had mentioned before. There's a lot of benefits to doing it this way. Also, inside of the solution, what makes up this micro data center, and a lot of this is optional, by the way. You don't have to do all of this. UPS obviously is best practice when you're talking about mission critical equipment. You want to make sure there's no power quality issues, power fluctuations, or power drops that are you're gonna lose your instance on the server or cause actual physical electrical damage to the server networking equipment. So we have lead acid and lithium ion UPSs. The lithium ion UPS is actually really great for edge because it's lightweight, it's smaller footprint. The battery life is almost double of what a lead acid is. So there's less truck rolls to go replace batteries. It can withstand harsher conditions. There's a lot of benefits to lithium ion. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Also with this enclosure, and we got a question about cooling earlier. You don't see the front door on this, but actually we designed it to have an air filter on the front. And on the rear side that you can't see here, there's fans built into the rear door. So there's ventilation that allows it to be placed in some of these harsher environments. So we mentioned a dusty environment potentially. I've seen pictures and walked into customer sites where it's just caked in dust and causes electrical issues and all kinds of issues over the long term. So keeping that stuff operating and performing optimally is important. So this particular solution has ventilation, so we call passive cooling. It's going to pass air through and get the heat out of the box. We have other micro data centers that are sealed with actual air conditioning inside. And of course, we can share more information on that later, but this particular solution has fan ventilation for cooling. We also have intelligent power distribution. So PDUs can go in the rear of the unit and provide some level of metering of power at the outlet or the PDU level, so you can tell exactly how much power you're drawing. But it also can provide remote switching of outlets. So a very popular common use case here is that you have an edge site, you see the server is hung up, and you need to power cycle that server. Well, rather than call somebody and have them go, unplug it and plug it back in or whatever you need to do, you can just power cycle it remotely through the outlet on the PDU. So it saves some time and headache there. We already talked about physical security and surveillance. Those are important. You can see some of that on the picture itself here. You can see the camera mounted on the top. We have door contacts on every panel, so it can tell if the door has been removed. It's going to tell you, door number 1 is open, or someone tried to physically break into the unit itself, right? That's a very cheap and cost-effective way to enhance your physical security. We talked about pre-integration. So the unit itself is designed to be able to be built with 250 pounds of equipment and shipped with 250 pounds of equipment and receive no damage, right? So that's purposely designed that way. It's not just we hope it arrives with no damage. We designed it and tested it to do that. And then, of course, we talked about our cloud-based remote management. So having that remote visibility into the solution to remotely troubleshoot and to remotely have peace of mind. And there's a whole host of other great benefits of the software, which I'm not going to get into today. You can find more on our website. But all of these things make up the micro data center and really allow partners like StorMagic to deploy a great solution at the edge. So I would welcome any questions on the solution itself, but that's really the micro data center in a nutshell.
All right. So there's a solution. As far as I'll kind of go through this real quick in terms of next steps. Obviously, everyone knows how to go to the StorMagic website, APC website, HPE website, etc. But we've given you some links here. I did get a question from someone about, can this deck be shared with everyone? And yes. So everyone that registered for the webinar will get these slides. We usually send them out when the recording is available. So everyone has access to the recording of the webinar. So it should be today's Thursday. If it's not tomorrow, it'll be Monday or Tuesday at the latest. If anyone needs the presentation today, contact us. You can contact me, Bruce_Kornfeld at StorMagic. I'd be happy to get it to you sooner. But yeah, the slides will be available to everyone. And if you're at HPE, you can certainly share it however you want. Nothing in here is confidential. It's all public information. So schedule a live demo, request a quote. The bottom one is the landing page on stormagic.com that talks about the solution with APC. So lots of opportunities for learning more. A couple of questions have come in that I can answer. One of them is how do I buy this solution? So I didn't cover that when we talked, so thanks for bringing that up. So the nice thing about this is that HPE is kind of the center of the universe here. in that HPE offers the whole solution. So they sell the APC 6U enclosure. They also have the ability to sell SVSAN software, as we're part of the HPE Complete program. So if you're an HPE salesperson on this call, if you're an HPE channel partner anywhere around the world, as long as you're a, I don't know what the right word is, certified or an authorized HPE reseller, you can order the whole solution through your relationship with HPE. There was also a question about support, since there's multiple vendors here, StorMagic, HPE, and APC. So because it's being sold by HPE, your first line of defense would be your support contract with HPE. Then, of course, StorMagic and APC can work with them if there's any issues that pop up. Ken, there's one question here that maybe you can answer. What kinds of customers are deploying the micro data center racks? Do you have examples that you can talk through?
Sure. So we've seen, it really runs the gamut. So we've seen some large big box retailers deploying this in their stores. And you can walk into some of these stores and look up on the wall and you'll see these types of solutions there running maybe their point of sale systems at the front area of the store, or some other in-store virtual applications. We have customers deploying it in healthcare, so like MRI imaging facilities, for instance, need some pretty heavy CPU, GPU to do what they do. So this is a compact solution they can have there next to the MRI machine in the office. We've seen school districts deploying these things as schools become more digital. We've seen large warehouses that are automated, deploying edge computing for automation purposes, and just traditional sites that need a compact solution for a network closet or any type of application. So all over the place right now.
The last question I have so far, unless anyone shows up with more questions, is can StorMagic scale beyond the 3 nodes? And here's the answer. So using our architecture, which is a synchronous mirror between two servers. By the way, I didn't mention earlier that, it's not even worth mentioning because in this use case, it probably doesn't make sense, but we can do stretch clusters, right? So the 2 servers do not have to be physically in the same rack. There could be in an environment. Actually, here's a use case. If you're an SMB or small business that has maybe 2 locations, you could deploy you can deploy one of these racks in each of your locations, and you could do a stretch cluster between the 2 sites so that if a whole site were to go down, everything can still be up and running at the remote at the other site. So we do 2-node synchronous mirroring, whether it's local or stretch cluster. We do that 3-node as well, and the way we do that is by doing what I call round robin synchronous mirroring. Some storage volumes mirror from server A to server B, some from server B to server C, and then some from server C to server A. So if any one node were to go down, there's still a surviving server with the failed server's storage. To go beyond 3, here's how we do that. We do have the ability to scale out beyond 3 servers, and what we would do with that is for compute nodes. So you can build yourself a highly available cluster with 2 or 3 servers. Now you've got highly available storage within the servers, and you can attach any number of compute nodes to it that you'd like using your hypervisor. So you can build a 16-node VMware compute cluster and attach it, or I should say connect it to the 2-node StorMagic cluster. Again, for edge, it's maybe not the best use case because it's usually 2 or 3 servers per site is plenty. But if you have a situation where you have more servers per site, you can build large compute clusters where you're using the StorMagic cluster with the HPE servers as the configuration for the storage, and then you can iSCSI share out the storage out to any number of compute nodes. Okay, someone's asked for the HP product number for this offering, and that I cannot give right here, but we can follow up with you. We know who asked the question. We can follow up with you via email. And then I've got a sales question from an HPE seller, I believe, that is, will all of this count towards quota, I think is the question. And I can answer, I'm pretty sure I'm accurate here, since HPE OEMs from APC Schneider and StorMagic's part of the complete program, I would believe. I don't run sales for HP, obviously, but I would say the whole solution would retire quota for HPE salespeople, but that's probably a question better answered by your sales leadership. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so thanks to everyone that joined. You will be getting emails from us in terms of follow-up with the links to the recording. You'll get the slides. You can contact us at sales@stormagic.com. Some of you, though, if you want the presentation, Bruce_Kornfeld with a K at stormagic.com. I'm happy to send you the slides ahead of time. And thanks very much for attending. Ken, thanks for joining me. And we'll talk with everyone next time. Thanks.